Competition doesn't sleep. So let's talk about how to remain effective in today's market. Many independent restoration companies hit a fork in the road. Sometimes the decision is whether to keep going it alone or to take the franchise road. I've consulted small business owners for a few decades, and I consistently see one thing that holds them back. They don't delegate sufficiently to attain their goals. While most entrepreneurs understand the challenge of delegating to employees, very few have even considered delegating up the organizational ladder. In other words, most entrepreneurs never think of adding an advisor to their team. Most don't delegate up. And for this reason, most aren't leading their field. Here at Stop, we aren't going to be your boss, but we'll bring the knowledge, systems, and support to focus on growth and profitability. When you become a Stop franchisee, you'll take on a national image right away. You'll connect with some new perspectives and dump some old patterns that might have been holding you back. We're known for building sizable companies, so we know what works. And the most fun we have around here is bragging about our franchisees. You can do this. Together, we can grow your company. And soon, you can stand out from your competitors. You will begin hitting goals, and you will thrive like others do in the Service Team of Professionals business family. We'd love to hear from you. We don't have a sales pitch waiting. Let's just have a conversation about your goals and go from there. Thanks for joining me.